Hello everybody, Yom Tov, and today is your True Crime Day. I apologise for me not uploading yesterday, but I have been fighting the killer headaches from hell, and I don't get migraines. This wasn't a migraine, it's actually sort of here. I can pinpoint it actually to here. And it's one of those, if you do something, it hurts. Well, I'm trying very hard not to sort of like flex my forehead too much or anything like that, because if I do something like that or raise an eyebrow or something, I can guarantee it's going to hurt. So that's what I was nursing all day yesterday. It was a swollen face, a toothache, and a killer headache from hell. And I was in no fit state to do anything. And I don't know whether I'm blighted not to upload on a Wednesday or what now. I have no clue. But it doesn't matter because I'm here now. And I suppose that's what counts. And I think you'd rather have me here than not. Because, I'm here to entertain you. So, we need all the laughs or non-laughs that we can get, I suppose, if you put it that way, during this particular situation. So anyway, let's get back to basics. I hope all of you are having the best day that you can have while we are in this particular situation. And, if we've got time at the end of the video, I'm going to look at the time now. Right, that's 5:30 my time it is now. So at least I know roughly when I started the video. Well, today I am going to bring you a crime that goes back. It'll be 160 years ago. And it's a British crime. And some of you may have heard of it, some of you may not. But I'm going to tell you about this particular, and it was a murder. I'm going to tell you about this particular girl who, this case was unforgettable in a way, especially in Britain. Although I say unforgettable, but once you're told about it, you don't forget it, because it happened in Scotland. The trial, when it took place, the ending was so remarkable that it's gone down in Scottish legal history, and it's been sort of used in comparison to other things across the world, from what I can gather. So without further ado, I'm going to tell you about Madeleine Smith. And, basically, was she guilty or was she not guilty of murder via arsenic poisoning? Well, let me tell you the little bits that I do know about her before I've got to keep jogging my memory from what I've gathered online. Because you know what I'm like with my memory. If I couldn't remember who it was that I'm going to read for Michael's birthday tomorrow, which our Candace very, very kindly reminded me was Johnny Appleseed. I know that now, it's going to be imprinted on my brain. But this particular case, I do know about it because when I was a little girl, I grew up in Glasgow, and it was one of the things that we were actually talked about and taught in history. And it was about this girl. I mean, it was highly sanitised for us because we were small. I mean, we were 7, 8 years old. But obviously I hadn't forgotten it, so when I got older, I familiarised myself with it even more. Now, Madeleine Smith was a Scottish girl. She was born in Glasgow in 1835, and her father was a highly renowned and highly respected architect in Glasgow. He was called James Smith. Now, he was held, like I said, he was held in very high regard, and they were wealthy middle class people. So they had servants, and they would have had their own carriage, and they would have gone to dinner parties, and left cards at each other's homes as to who would be available for us to come and have tea, that sort of thing. Well, I'll get her name right yet. Madeleine was due to have an arranged marriage. Well, a sort of arranged marriage between herself and a man called, I believe his name was William Fullen. I think I'm going to have to remind myself of that. It was, let me see, William Minnick. This guy was called William Minnick, and he was the son of a neighbour, and they were courting, as in he may take a walk with her while she was being sort of chaperoned. They would go for a walk after Sunday tea or after going to church or something like that, because they always went to church. All the families went to church. They all sat together. It was one of these seen to be seen sort of scenarios, and this was in the time we're talking about in particular is 1857. Well, there was an understanding between Madeleine and William that he was going to ask her to marry him. Now, there was a little problem. Madeleine was having a secret love affair with a guy called, and I need to bring his name up because otherwise I won't remember it. She was having an affair with a man, apparently he lived in the Channel Islands, and his name was Émile Langelier, and they had been having an affair. Now, they used to write to each other a lot, and from what was read out in the trial, the letters were of an extremely sexual and passionate nature. And in one of the letters, Madeleine referred to Emile as her husband. Now, back in those days, if a girl referred to a man in those lights, it meant that they had had sex. And of course, she was very young. She would be about 1835 to 1857. She would have been 21, 22. But it was still considered young. And in those days, you were supposed to go to your marriage bed a virgin. Well, the whole crux of the matter is that for all she'd had this love affair with Émile Langelier, and they'd exchanged all these passionate love letters and what have you, Madeleine was getting a bit sick of seeing him. She was sort of like, the whole idea of the affair was wearing thin on her. And she said to him, look, I don't want to see you anymore. And I've got the chance to make a good marriage, so I want my letters returned. And this Langelier had said to her, well, I'll give you your letters back on one condition, that we make love one last time, and that you come and see me one last time. and then I'll release the letters to you. So that's what she did. They met up. I mean, they're saying that's what they did, but it was highly speculated that was what they did. And when she asked for her letters back, he went, no, I've changed my mind. I've decided that I'm not going to break off the relationship with you. I want to keep on seeing you. So you're going to have to keep on seeing me, because if you don't, then I'll send the letters, to your family, to your future fiance. Well, of course, Madeleine couldn't be having any of that. So she sort of half agreed to it, but realised that it just could not happen. So she went to visit what we would now consider a pharmacist, an apothecary, to get some arsenic. Now, back in the day, part of your beauty routine was using arsenic. They've been using arsenic since Victorian times, and it was to whiten the skin, mostly. Of course, nobody realised back then that the more you used, it was highly likely that it was going to kill you. And now, I can't remember the exact details. This is where I'm going to have to go back into the story. So you're going to have to, please forgive me if I go back into the story, and I'll come out and I'll make a bit of a commentary, but I'm going to go back a bit into the story and tell you all what I know. So basically, she was very comfortable, and the house that they lived in was actually built and designed by her own father. And he built a great big row of houses, very posh houses. And of course, they more or less had the best one. They attended the United Presbyterian Church in Glasgow, so that's where all the best families attended church. And of course, this is where William Minnock put in the appearance. He was a businessman, and he brought in an income of £4,000 a year. Now, keeping in mind this is the 1850s, £4,000 a year, you'd probably be looking at 10 times that today. 400,000 a year. I mean, I may be off, but not by far. So we're talking about a really healthy income for especially a young bride to set up her own home, and considering that servants were paid a pittance and what have you, she was going to be living a good life. Now, like I say, Madeleine hadn't told the rest of the family that she'd been seeing this guy from the Channel Islands called Émile Langelier, and he was initially employed as a seed packer. That's what he did. And he only earned £50 a year. So you weigh it up, don't you? William at 4,000 a year, Emile, smart and sexy, £50 a year. There's no real comparison there, is there? William might have had a face like a pig's backside, but considering it's £4,000 a year, you can always close your eyes, can't you? So anyway, when Madeleine became formally engaged to William, she decided that she was going to break with Langelier, as I said, and she said, I want my letters back. And like I told you, it was that I want us to meet up first, and then it was, no, we're not going to do this. And so she thought, what am I going to do? So it was just happened to be coincidental that she was saying to him, well, I tell you what, I'll come round and see you, but I can only come round at a certain time, about 2:30 in the afternoon. maybe we could take tea together, or tea afterwards or whatever. And she went round to see him. They enjoyed themselves. And it was after that that Emile was complaining of stomach pains. And he became very ill. Now, 2 occasions after the first time when he was feeling unwell, she begged him, please can I have my letters back? And again, he refused to hand them over. So by the 3rd time she went to see him, he had another drink of her tea. And by this point, the guy was so ill that he died. And the post-mortem showed he'd suffered from arsenic poisoning. And from that, they took, said who was the last person to see him. A maid had said the last person that she saw visit Mr. Langelier was Madeleine Smith. So the police arrested Madeleine and they took her to jail. She was actually taken to Edinburgh to stand trial for his murder. Now, this was a very, very high-profile case at the time. And the Lord Advocate for Scotland, James Wellwood Moncrief, that he was the one who was the prosecutor, while his opponent as a defence counsel was Moncrief's lifelong friend, John Inglis. And it's fair to say that as counsel for the prosecution, Moncrief laboured under a number of disadvantages. The first was a general disinclination, which he may well have shared, to hang a really attractive and young girl from a well-to-do family. He was very, very loath to have that on his conscience. He didn't want to do that. The very fact, she turned up to court with what they called a mantilla, a black lace veil over her bonnet. She was only very small, this tiny little, very, very pale face, so she looked so incredibly innocent. And it was a case of, this has got to be wrong. This poor girl, it's all got to be wrong. And apparently it was said by John Inglis's biographer, and he was the defence, the pale but fresh young face set in the curtained bonnet of the day, the graceful figure, its lines traceable through the lace of a black mantilla, the lustrous eyes, and the full quivering lips, as she sat in the seat whence so many had gone to the scaffold, causing even strong men to quail at the mere apprehension of her doom. Guilty or innocent, she made them think, not of the crime, or of the possibility that her hand poisoned the fatal cup, but of their own sisters and daughters. To hang her was impossible. So, the thing is that the prosecutor, who was Moncrief, was so against prosecuting her that he actually said in his summing up to the jury, "Gentlemen, I could have rejoiced if the result of the inquiry it is our duty to make, and of the laborious collection of every element of proof which we could find, would have justified us on behalf of the Crown in resting content with the investigation of the facts and withdrawing our charge against the prisoner." But he says at the same time he is repelled by the clear evidence of Madeleine's letters to her lover that they had engaged in illicit sexual intercourse. Of the letters, Moncrief declared that the language in which they are couched, the matters to which they refer, shows so entire an overthrow of the moral sense, the sense of moral delicacy and decency, as to create a picture which I do not know ever had its parallel in a case of this sort. Both Moncrief and to a much greater extent Inglis concluded that she could only have learned such behaviour from the victim himself, Langelier. So they actually put all the blame for all of this onto Emile Langelier, right? Which sounds crazy, but that's exactly what happened. The other thing that strikes everybody is that Moncrief's interrogation of Madeleine was soft, and he was extremely restrained in the way he put his point across, and he was very aware of the fact that she came from a gentle family, a well-to-do family, but obviously a genteel and gentle family, and that he had to be a professional. He had to find a motive for the murder. He had to find out, did she have the means to carry it out? Did she actually go and buy the arsenic? She said yes, she did. But why did she buy the arsenic? It was for beauty purposes, to use in my daily routine when putting cream upon my face. So you do admit to buying the arsenic? Yes. I see. So he then got that she admitted to buying it, but he also had to work out, did she have the motive for killing him? And that the thing is, let's face it, if William Minnock had been made aware that Madeleine had been having a secret sexual love affair with Emile Langelier, being as it was at the time, and I'm no doubt it would happen these days as well, he would have turned his back at her. He would have said, no, I'm not having, he would have used terms like used goods, soiled goods. He would have expected to marry a virgin. And this girl was clearly not a virgin. So there's no way that he would have married her. So we all know, we can sum it up. She didn't want those letters to get out to either him or to our family. She didn't want to lose the chance of a really good marriage. So the way I think of this, they should have gone in on her harder, but they didn't, because of her social status, her social standing, the fact that she came from a really good family. The prosecutor and the defender both knew her father. When you think architects, solicitors, Queen's Counsel, all these sort of people, they all mixed together, so they all knew each other. And the prosecutor was struggling, really struggling, to find a way that he could go ahead and accuse her of murder, because the only result of that would have been that she would have been hanged. She would have gone straight to the gallows. So, this is where everything stood. She definitely had the means. Did she have the opportunity? That's where it hinged, because they said, when did she have the opportunity? Well, definitely the 2 times that she went to visit Langelier to take tea with him. And both times after she'd taken tea with him, he became ill. So you've got to put 2 and 2 together. But they are trying to say that she was too delicate a person to even think of doing this sort of thing. and she would only have known about, you know, using arsenic as a poison to kill someone only if Langelier had put this into her head. Now, it certainly wouldn't float boats today, would it? So, it was interference, conjecture, then interference and conjecture, back and forward, back and forward. And then at the end of the day, I've told you what the prosecutor said to the jury. It was more or less, how can you possibly convict? I mean, and he was prosecuting her. You know, he more or less did the defence's job for him. And when the jury came back, they didn't say not guilty. They said not proven. And that's what makes this case stand out in history. It had never, ever had a case like it, because you'd normally either have guilty or not guilty. But to have not proven, it's like, we think she did it, but we're not sure. Or we're sure she did it, but how can we go against someone of her standing? So that's how this case was particularly notorious. And this hung over her for the rest of her life. It was Madeleine Smith, did she do it or didn't she? And I found the case absolutely fascinating, because she definitely had the means, she definitely had the motive. She knew that if she didn't carry on seeing Langelier, you know, if William Minnock found out, then she would have lost the opportunity of a lifetime. As it was, she did lose him, because when the case and everything came out, he didn't want anything to do with her. So she did lose him. And that was basically that. But apparently there's a postscript to the story, is that according to the members of the Moncrief family, after the trial was over, James Moncrief, the prosecutor, invited both the trial judge, Lord Hope, and the defence counsel, John Inglis, to dinner at the family home in Tullibol Castle. After the dinner was over, a servant entered and told the diners that there was a man at the door who wished to speak to them urgently. The man, it turned out, was a sailor only recently returned from a long voyage. He'd read in the papers about the trial and had some important information. According to him, before he left to go abroad, he happened to see Madeleine Smith on the night Langelier was poisoned, and she was emerging from the basement of Blytheswood Square in the company of a young man answering to the description of Langelier. He recognised Madeleine, who'd been at primary school with him. What should he do? The three eminent lawyers conferred together. Then they each dug into their pockets and pulled out all their ready cash, amounting to exactly 20 guineas. Take that, they told the sailor, and say no more about it. So what do you make of that? They knew, didn't they, that they had let a murderer walk free. They knew it. And I think the jury should have passed a guilty verdict. To pass one of not proven shows you what it was like, the class system at the time. You know, rich man in his castle, the poor man at his gate, God made them high and lowly, and ordered their estate. That was a little saying at the time, know your betters, know your place. And the jury would have been made up of ordinary men, working men, not necessarily, lawyers and people like that. They would have been made up of, say, postal workers, bakers, delivery men, clerks, men like that. Because obviously back in those days, women couldn't sit on juries. So you're talking about ordinary working men who came up with the only verdict that they could. And she went on to live, I believe, a relatively happy life. I don't know that much about her later life. I know she died in 1928. And she did marry. But I can't remember who she married, to be honest with you. But if you Google Madeleine Smith and the not proven Scottish case, then you'll be able to find out a lot more about her there. And that's why it was so notorious, as I've explained to you. Right, so that's the end of your true crimes for today, my darlings. And I just wanted to, it's something I should have said to you on Monday. It was about, this feeling of when I said no, so near and yet so far. Well, I've talked before about when I had to have radiotherapy. And I had to go into isolation for 3 weeks. Okay. That meant I couldn't touch my children. And the nearest they could be to me was 12 feet, which works out at about 3.5 to 4 meters. That's the closest they could be to me at any given time for a full rounded 21 days. So it worked out at about 22, give or take an hour. But it was important that I had to see every hour of those 21 days in isolation. Because being near them, I could make them ill. I could affect their reproductive organs, having so much radiation inside of me. I could make them physically sick. I could give them terrible headaches. I wasn't going to do that to them. And I could see them, but I couldn't touch them. And the reason why I didn't stay in hospital and have my isolation there was my son at the time was only 7, coming up to 8, and I was part of his routine. There's no way he could cope mentally or emotionally with me not being there, even just to look at. My daughter was 12, but we've always been incredibly close. And our paediatrician said that she would suffer emotionally if she couldn't see me. So I had it done during the summer break. And obviously when you have radiation therapy, that you get sick and you feel incredibly tired and what have you. But when I was awake, I would make sure we were sitting 12 feet apart. But I'd get them to throw me a book and I'd read them a story, or I'd talk to them. And I remember my daughter saying, I don't care what happens to me, but I just want to hug you, Mummy. And let's just say it was a really, really horrible time. It was like hell on earth. So I do understand what it's like, this situation that we're in. When people say it's so hard FaceTiming, you can't touch the ones you love. I've been through that. So I want to say to anybody out there, I do strongly feel all of you, because I have been through it and I know how it feels. Not be able to touch the ones that you love. Because if you do, they could get sick. But like everything else, the time came to an end. And that day, even my son, who's not that keen on being hugged, I got hugged really hard that day. And my daughter wouldn't leave my side. So you see, there is light at the end of the tunnel, there is. And it's been 20 years. So we can get through this, guys. We can. And we are. Now, I also want to quick tell you before I go, oops, I'm going to go over time. Some of you won't like that, but I'm going to be doing live tarot readings, but with a twist. Gypsy Rose Header is coming back, and I'm going to organise the live readings through Facebook. I might try one through YouTube just to test the waters. But Gypsy Rose Header, with her crystal goblet of fortune, is going to put in an appearance, and she's going to be doing some comic readings with tarot. I mean, don't get me wrong, I told you I'm not going to do health or anything like that, but if you want some comic tarot with a twist for fun, you know, for entertainment purposes only, allegedly, then that's what I'm going to do. And Gypsy Rose Header is going to come back and do some tarot with you. Okay? And our Ronnie and Skylar have asked me to do a reading on their relationship, and they want it done live among all you Haveners. So that's the one I'm going to do first. And I'm going to do it as soon as possible. You know, if I thought I could do it tonight, I would try tonight. But I'm going to have to see how it goes, because I can feel the head coming back on. I need to make a video tomorrow for Michael. So, I don't know if you feel tomorrow's too soon. But, you know, strike while the iron's hot, eh? Anyway, I've looked at the time now. It's been about 40 minutes, so I'm going to say I love you. I hope you've enjoyed this true crime. And please let me know what you think of it in the comments. Let me know what you think about Gypsy Rose Header coming back. And I shall speak to you again very, very soon. Now, take care and stay safe. Right? Love you all. Bye for now. Bye-bye.